So let's get started with setting up RSpec in Rails. I just need to have the RSpec Rails gem inside development test. And then now what I can do is run a bundle install. Sweet. And run the Rails RSpec generator. What this does is it sets up three files, the .rspec, the spec helpers, and the Rails helpers. So if we quickly take a look into the .rspec file, we can see that this is where you can have customized settings for RSpec. The color allows me to kind of show when I do run the specs, it distinguishes colors of different types so that I can easily read the messages. For more information, just go online and read the documentation for the settings for RSpec. The other thing to note is actually create the spec folder, and this is where actually all the specs now get loaded to. So in our current project, there was originally a user active record, but what it didn't do is generate a RSpec model for that. So let's actually go back and regenerate that model. There we go. Now we can see inside the models folder, we've actually got a spec for user. Now to note that once you've installed RSpec though, any subsequent model you generate will in fact have the RSpec test generated with it. So in this case, I'm going to generate a new model called exam. And if we look carefully, we see that there is now an exam spec that automatically got set up with it. So in our user spec model, let's try to do our first red-green test. I'm going to make a function called phoname and not implement anything in it right now. So let's write a spec for this. So the describe block just allows me to encapsulate a whole bunch of different tests, and I can nest as many describes as I want. And the second thing I'm going to do is actually write the test itself. It results in a combination of the first name and last name. So we should create a user here. And then write an expectation that when I call the phoname method, it should equal to Cody Blackwell, which is the phoname. So let's actually go and run this spec simply by typing bundle exec RSpec. Oh, and realize that we actually need to make sure we run migrations for the test environment. So the test database always it's completely separate from your development. And so anytime you write new migrations, make sure you run that before you run your tests. So let's run that again. There we go. Now we have a failed test. So this is the red test that we're looking for. And the other thing you'll note is that there's this pending test that hasn't been implemented. And it just kind of serves as a reminder in our exam that we may want to write some tests here at some point. So let's actually make this pass and see what happens. So really the full name is a combination of the first name and the last name with a space in it. And so let's rerun our specs and see what happens. There you go. We have now two examples, no failures, and one of them is the pending spec, just as we expected.